What's up? Star Trek: The Next Generation, Season 5. You know, it's not fair if it's a two-part episode and I say it's a Make It So episode for the first part and not make the second part a Make It So. If it's a two-part episode, both parts are Make It So. But that doesn't count for the 5 Make It So's for the rest of the season. That way I can still pick 5 episodes to Make It So! That made sense, right? Episode 1, Redemption, Part 2. So here we are at the big conclusion to the Klingon Civil War with Worf trying to clear his family name, and then you got Denise Crosby coming back as Sayla? Sayla? Am I saying that right? Am I Sayla-ing that right? And what's great about her is that it continues what was set up in the episode Yesterday's Enterprise dies again. Like I said before, that was a fitting conclusion to Tasha Yar, and yet it wasn't the conclusion to Tasha Yar. Beard! She had a daughter with a Romulan, and now it comes back to haunt the Enterprise, and I much preferred Redemption Part 2 to Part 1. Having said that, Redemption as a whole redeemed itself. Who would have thunk, huh? Episode 2, Darmok. So Picard has to learn to communicate with this alien that only speaks through metaphors. Now, silly concept aside, I actually really liked this episode, but the best treat is that by the end of the episode, you too will be able to speak this metaphorical alien language, which is pretty cool. Episode 3, Ensign Ro. So the show introduces a new semi-regular female cast member, and I love it! In design, her character can participate more actively in the adventures, more so than Dr. Crusher and Counselor Troy, which is great. Plus, her tough-as-nails attitude totally gives a female perspective on the show that we really haven't seen since Tasha Yar. Bravo. Episode 4, Silicon Avatar. This crystalline entity is kind of wreaking havoc on this planet, and Picard has to decide if he's just going to destroy it or find some more peaceful way to alleviate the situation. This is the stuff I love. It's got those tough moral dilemmas and serious ramifications either way, given what Picard decides to do. It's a solid episode with an even more surprising ending. Episode 5, Disaster. The Enterprise becomes inoperable, kind of trapping the crew in various locations around the ship. So what I love about this episode is it's almost like a series of vignettes that kind of weave together perfectly. The writing of this episode emphasizes character over plot and makes for just a really satisfying story and one of my personal favorites of the season. Episode 6, The Game. Wesley Crusher returns to save the day when the Enterprise gets addicted to the stupidest game ever. It's a welcome return for Wesley, even if the episode itself is a little ho-hum, but he totally gets to flirt with Ashley Judd. Episode 7, Unification, Part 1. I don't know, there's some sort of like Romulan shenanigans going on or something. Spock! In the last 5 seconds of the episode. Episode 8, Unification, Part 2. Spock returns, this time for the whole episode. And to be honest, I don't even remember what the heck the episode was about, except Spock is kind of this James Bondy kind of Spock, and he's running around doing all these Spock things and being all awesome, and Spock. Episode 9, A Matter of Time. So Max Headroom visits the Enterprise from the future to study them. Matt Frewer is one of the best guest stars this season. He has so much fun, it's just infectious, and it, to be honest, makes you forget about the plot holes. Why doesn't he just ask the crew for some souvenirs, right? He's from the future. He doesn't need to steal anything. That's only going to create suspicion. Right? That was a terrible Max Headroom impression. Episode 10, New Ground. So it's time for some quality father and son time when Alexander, Worf's son, returns. And you know, I was really happy to see them bring the character of Alexander back. One of the great things about The Next Generation is that throughout the course of the series, they allow the characters to change and grow. And it's that kind of depth that I believe is one of the reasons this show stands the test of time and is so beloved, and it makes me love it even more. Plus, that kid was totally in blank check. Episode 11, Hero Worship. In this episode, a human boy decides to be an android, just like Data. This is probably my least favorite Data episode of the series so far. I like the concept, and the episode isn't bad by any means. It just didn't click with me for some reason. Episode 12, Violations. Troy gets molested in her mind. Episode 13, The Masterpiece Society. The Enterprise attempts to save a society that's been genetically engineered to be perfect. I didn't like this episode. I mean, basically it boils down to, should the Enterprise save this society from total annihilation or not? Yes, the Enterprise should save you. The fact that there's any debate about this at all is just stupid. And they make a whole episode out of it. You can skip that one. Episode 14, Conundrum. So in this episode, all of the crew's memories of each other are erased. And this is one of those great mystery episodes that's heavy on plot and character. I especially enjoyed that relationship between Riker and Ro. That old salty dog never quits, does he? And even though you can see the big reveal coming a mile away, what's great about it is the reveal kind of plays second fiddle to the character moments themselves. Episode 15, Power Play. So Data, Troy, and O'Brien get possessed and take over the Enterprise. I gotta say, this was the season. Season 5 was the season that got Troy right. I'm finally rooting for her character. They're giving her more stuff to do and they're utilizing her correctly. That said, this is a really fun episode, even if it's ultimately a little hollow. Episode 16, Ethics. Make it so! This is hands down the best Beverly Crusher episode of the series. I loved this episode so much, and it probably wouldn't be a normal Make It So episode, but Beverly Crusher shines so much in this episode, I just had to include it. So basically, Worf gets paralyzed from the waist down, and Dr. Crusher has to make this decision whether or not to let this other doctor try this experimental procedure that could kill Worf, or just let Worf stay paralyzed from the waist down. Of course, Worf is a warrior. He's a Klingon. He can't be paralyzed from the waist down. And they have this Klingon ritual where they commit suicide if you can't be a warrior anymore. I mean, there is just some heavy stuff in this episode. Boy, Troy's getting some love. Dr. Crusher's getting some love. This season is shaping up to be a good one. Episode 17, The Outcast. There are two things that are awesome about this episode. One, it's a Riker episode. Beard! So that automatically makes it awesome. Two, it's one of those rare episodes that deals with the topic of homosexuality. Beard? Now, last season I mentioned the episode The Host, which dealt with it a little bit more indirectly. But this episode, the allegory is front and center. It's what the episode is about. Riker falls in love with this androgynous alien. Riker can just never catch a break falling in love, can he? And the way they write it is so creative. So if you think about it, the way that homosexual prejudice works is you're ridiculed because you identify with someone who is the same as you, right? And with this androgynous species, because they're all the same, you're ridiculed if you identify with someone that's different than you. So if you identify with any gender, male or female. So it's almost a reverse. You know what I mean? So while this episode may not be one of the most essential episodes, it's definitely one of the most important episodes. And not just of the season, but of the entire series. Episode 18, Cause and Effect. Make it so! Star Trek meets Groundhog Day, and Riker directed it. This episode is just awesome from front to back. I don't need to say any more. Watch it. Oh, plus, Frasier. Episode 19, The First Duty. I know I said last season that the final mission was Wesley's best episode. I take it back. This is Wesley Crusher's best episode. And once again, it focuses on the relationship between Wesley and Picard. You know, I totally didn't think we would see Wesley again so soon. That's like 2 episodes this season. But I'm so glad he came back because this episode was one of my personal favorites of the season. Man, the Crushers are crushing it this season. Episode 20, The Cost of Living. So, Lwaxana Troi and Worf's son, Alexander, probably get the most screen time this episode, and I don't hate it. What the heck is going on? Episode 21, The Perfect Mate. Professor X and Jean Grey before Professor X and Jean Grey. Episode 22, Imaginary Friend. So little girl's imaginary friend becomes real, threatens the Enterprise. Filler episode, totally skippable. Episode 23, I, Borg. Make it so! It is about time they got back to the Borg. The last time we saw the Borg was in the first episode of season 4. So it's been almost 2 entire seasons since we've seen the Borg. And what a welcome return it was. The Enterprise finds one Borg, one singular Borg, and bring it on board and revive it. The Enterprise revives a Borg. Can you believe it? Never saw that one coming. So beyond that little shocking twist, Geordi befriends the Borg. And then the Borg starts exhibiting real emotions. I mean, it's not like Data, where Data is more curious than he is emotive. Does that make sense? This Borg can understand emotions and feelings and has them. And so then it comes down to, does Picard want to use this Borg to infiltrate the rest of the Borg and kind of sabotage that ship, or not, because he feels empathy for the Borg? Oh, what a great twist on the kind of mythos of the Borg, and to learn that the Borg can actually have feelings gave so much depth to their race. What a surprising episode. I absolutely loved it from start to finish. That's one of those episodes that when the credits hit, you're like, no, I want more. What have you done to me, Star Trek? I'm watching the next episode now. Episode 24, The Next Phase. So basically, Geordi and Ensign Ro become ghosts. That's the simplest way to explain this episode, and I love it. I love the relationship between Ensign Ro and Geordi. And I don't know if it's something that gets explored throughout the rest of the series, but I really hope they come back to it. The only thing this episode is missing, Scary Train Man! Episode 25, The Inner Light. Make it so! Whoa. This episode is Star Trek. This is one of those episodes that if someone wasn't even going to watch 5 episodes a season, wasn't even going to watch, they were going to watch 1 episode of this entire series, this might be the episode I show them. So the episode revolves around Picard living another life, an entire other life. Of course, there's some sort of, sci-fi thing that explains it all away, but when you talk about some of the hard-hitting, emotional episodes of Star Trek, this is at the top of that list. When the credits hit, the tears are rolling. And it reminded me a lot of the episode Family from season 4. This was a fantastic companion piece to that, in the sense that we explore more of who Picard is. Episode 26, Time's Arrow. Make it so! So Data's dead, steampunk, time travel, Picard meets Guinan, and Mark Twain is a douchebag. That sounds like a good finale. Now, I enjoyed this far more than I did last season's finale. This was so much more fun and inventive, and just kind of had all those Star Trek elements mixed together. And we've seen a lot of time travel episodes, but you rarely see them go back in time to a place like the turn of the century and meet historical figures like Mark Twain. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got a little bit of everything. Well done, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Well done. So what are my final thoughts? Season 5 came in with a bang, and it went out with a bang. And in the middle, there was some banging as well. Having said that, Season 5, one of my favorite seasons, definitely on par with Season 3 as far as quality of episodes and quantity of those quality episodes. You know, I realized the other day that I've now am officially way past the halfway point of the entire series. I'm in that final chunk. The countdown has begun to get to the end. And I'm starting to get a little sad because I know, as much as I want to get to the end, that once I finish, there's going to be nothing left. It's starting to sink in. I've only got 2 seasons left now. So I'll see you next time. Beard!